Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In our previous sessions, we built a solid foundation for nutritional science by exploring the importance of a balanced diet, that is the roles of macronutrients like carbohydrates, proteins and lipids, and the critical functions of micronutrients, specifically vitamin C and D. Along with, we also discussed about essential minerals like calcium and iron. Today, we are turning our focus to two very important components which are vital for our body functions, that is water and fiber. So let's dive in. We previously called water as the unsung hero of the body, but let's look at the biological architecture. My dear viewers, your body is essentially a collection of specialized compartments, all filled with water. We categorize these components based on one simple question, that is the water inside the cell or outside? First, we have intracellular fluid. This makes up about two-thirds of our body's total water. Think of this as the living soup of the cell. It is your cytoplasm. It is the essential crowded environment where your organelles like your mitochondria, they operate, they perform their functions, and they synthesize proteins and generate the energy which keeps you alive. The remaining one-third is your extracellular fluid. This is the water outside of your cells. It is split into two vital components. Number one is blood plasma. Blood plasma is the liquid part of your blood, acting as the high-speed delivery system which transports nutrients, oxygens, and hormones throughout your entire body. And second one is tissue fluid. This is the water that baths the exterior of your cells. It acts as the intermediary, facilitating the critical exchange of gases and waste products between your blood and your cells. And without this constant, precise balance between these two compartments means intracellular and extracellular fluid, your cells would either shrink from dehydration or swell and burst. So maintaining this internal water balance is one of the most important jobs your body performs every single second of the day. To survive, our bodies must maintain a perfect steady state, and that we call homeostasis, where your total water intake is constantly balanced against your water loss. Even a tiny deviation can cause your blood pressure to drop or your cellular functions to stutter. Let's look at the inevitable cost of staying alive. Dear viewers, we lose about 1.5 liters of water every single day through three main pathways. The first one is excretion. Through our kidneys as urine and our digestive tract as feces, we lose water. The second one is evaporation. Every time you breathe out, you lose water vapor. Feel your breath against your hand. Okay, if you want to feel that evaporation, okay, feel your breath against your hand. That is water leaving your body. And third one is also very important. That is thermoregulation. Thermoregulation means sweating. Sweating is our primary cooling system. It uses evaporative cooling to pull heat away from the skin and keep your internal temperatures steady. So how do we replenish this? We have three distinct paths to stay hydrated. Number one is fluid intake. Fluid intake is simply drinking water and other liquids. The second one is dietary water. Did you know that food is a hydration source? Why? Because a cucumber, for example, I'm giving you an example. A cucumber is roughly 95% water. The third source is metabolic water. This is the hidden source. Because during aerobic respiration, the process where your cells turn glucose into energy, your body actually manufactures water as a chemical byproduct, and that water is not wasted. It is immediately recycled back into your body's system. So you are not just a passive container of water, you are a dynamic system, constantly balancing intake, loss, and even internal production. And this is the amazing machinery of the human body. We often talk about food and nutrients, but let's be very clear about the biological stakes. The margin of our error with water is incredibly thin. While a human can survive for weeks without solid food, water deprivation becomes lethal in just a matter of days. For example, at just 5% water loss, the impact is immediate and severe. Your brain function begins to falter, motor coordination drops significantly, and in many cases, people lose consciousness. So it is your body's way of trying to shut down to preserve water. Secondly, what if we lose 10% water? At 10% loss, we reach the critical threshold. Your blood becomes too viscous, meaning it thickens significantly. Think about trying to pump honey through a straw. Your heart cannot handle that resistance, and this leads to circulatory collapse, multi-organ failure, and eventually death. So why is water so effective? We call it the universal solvent. What we call water? We call water as a universal solvent. In chemistry, a solvent is a substance which dissolves solutes. And because water can dissolve sugars, salts, and amino acids, it serves two non-negotiable rules. First one, as a transport medium. It turns your blood into a highway, moving essential glucose and oxygen to every corner of your body from head to your toe. Secondly, as a reaction site. Life is basically a series of complex chemical equations, and those equations only work when the reactants are dissolved in an aqueous solution, meaning they have to be floating in water to meet, interact, and react. So water is not just something which you drink, it is the environment in which your life happens. We can say water is life. As we have talked about macro and micronutrients which provide us energy, and we have talked about structure, and we have talked about water, now let's wrap up with the final essential piece of a balanced diet, that is dietary fiber. We often call it roughage. Fiber is truly unique. Unlike the proteins or carbohydrates we have spent hours discussing, the human body completely lacks the enzymes required to digest it. We cannot break it down. We cannot absorb fiber, and we definitely do not get any calories from it. But here is the irony. Its indigestibility is exactly why it is so critical for your health. Basically, fiber is primarily made of cellulose, that complex rigid carbohydrate which forms the cell walls of every plant which you eat. And because your body cannot break down that tough cellulose, it stays in your digestive tract from start to finish. Think of fiber like a mechanical force traveling through your system, and as it moves, it provides the physical bulk that the muscle of your digestive tract need to push against. It is like providing a firm structure for the system to grab hold of. This process triggers peristalsis. What is peristalsis? Peristalsis is rhythmic wave-like contractions of the gut. Without fiber, that digestive highway becomes sluggish. With it, the system stays efficient, keeps everything moving smoothly, and prevents the discomfort of constipation. So when you are eating those leafy greens, you are not just eating empty plant material, you are actually fueling the mechanical engine of your own digestive system. Here is an example for you, my dear students, that when you are asked about fiber on an exam, the examiners often focus on digestion. You should make sure that they emphasize the term mechanical. It is the mechanical action of the fiber on the gut wall that is the key to getting higher marks. Now, let's get into the mechanics of how fiber actually works inside the alimentary canal. The primary role of fiber is to provide bulk, physical volume to the contents of your digestive system. Think of it as the necessary weight the system needs to do its job. And as that fiber-rich bolus, the chewed up ball of food, moves through your intestines, its volume physically stretches. As you can see here, okay? It stretches the muscle walls of the canal. Now, this is not just a passive stretch, it is a biological trigger. That stretching signals the stretching phenomena signals the circular and longitudinal muscles in your gut wall to wake up. It triggers peristalsis, which is a series of coordinated wave-like muscular contractions. Imagine a tube being squeezed rhythmically from behind, pushing the contents forward. Why is this so important for your health? It ensures efficient transit. These contractions move food and waste steadily through the system, preventing the contents from becoming stagnant. When waste sits too long in the system, it can lead to health issues. So keeping things moving with enough fiber is the secret to a healthy gut. As a pro tip for you, my dear students, that if a question asks why fiber is important, do not just say it moves food. Use the phrase fiber provides bulk, which stretches the gut wall to stimulate peristalsis. The specific chain of events is exactly what the examiners are looking for. So you will have to memorize, will have to conceptually understand this phenomena and write down the proper phrase in your answer sheet. As we have looked at how fiber keeps the engine of the gut running, but what happens when the engine runs out of fuel? A diet low in roughage means a diet low in fiber that slows down the transit time of waste, and this delay leads to serious health complications. The first one is constipation. When waste moves too slowly through the colon, it does not just sit there. The colon continues to perform its job of reabsorbing water. The longer the waste stays in the colon, the more water is sucked out of it, turning the feces hard, dry, and very difficult to pass. It is a simple biological chain reaction, but there are deeper long-term risks. A chronic lack of fiber is linked to an increased risk of bowel cancer. Think of fiber as a broom. It physically sweeps the digestive tract. So, by keeping waste moving quickly, fiber also helps to dilute potential carcinogens, which are cancer-causing substances that may be present in our food or produced as waste. By moving those substances out of the body quickly, fiber significantly limits the time they have to interact with and damage the lining of your gut. The lesson here is very simple. Your digestive health is not just about feeling better. It is about protecting your body's long-term internal environment, and keeping that fiber in your diet is very essential for having a balanced one. As a pro tip for you, when discussing bowel cancer, emphasize the transit time argument. Examiners often reward students who explain that shorter transit time is equal to less contact time between potential carcinogens and the gut wall. So you should understand this concept. To wrap up our entire unit on nutrition, we have this master summary. If you want to know what a balanced diet actually looks like, these are the 6 pillars which you need to maintain. We started with our macronutrients. These are macronutrients. Number one is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is for your immediate energy. Lipids for long-term storage and cell structure. And proteins are required for the growth, repair, and vital functions in your body like enzymes and antibodies. These are your building and burning blocks. Then we moved to the maintenance components, which include vitamins and minerals. Vitamins and minerals are our metabolic regulators. They keep the chemistry of life running and maintain your bones and blood. Then we discuss about water as we discussed in our today's lecture. Water, as we have just discussed, is our universal solvent, an essential transport medium. And finally, we have fiber. While it is not fiber is not a nutrient in the traditional sense, it is the mechanical engine which keeps your digestive system moving through peristalsis and ensures your long-term bowel health. So a balanced diet is simply the act of ensuring all 6 of these components which should be present in the correct proportions. If you can memorize this table, you have the foundational knowledge to answer almost any question on nutrition in your biology exam. Here is a quick exercise for your exam point of view. Here is a table. There are four types of food: food A, B, C, and D, and there are also five questions. Okay, first question is, which food would be best to prevent rickets? Explain your answer. Question B is, which food would be best for a young person training for cross country running? Explain your answer. Which food would be the most needed by a menstruating woman? You should explain your answer. Which food would be the most useful to a bodybuilder? Explain your answer. And last question is, which food would be most dangerous for a person with heart disease? Explain your answer. As we have covered the what question in these lectures 7.1, 7.2, and this one 7.3. Now let's talk about the why by applying our knowledge to specific life scenarios. My dear viewers, nutrition is not a one size fits all plan. Your biological needs change based on your activity, your health, and your life stages. Now, as I have previously discussed, look at this data table. To prevent rickets, our analysis points to food A. Why? Because it provides a massive 40 micrograms of vitamin D, as you can see here, okay? 40 micrograms, which is non-negotiable for calcium absorption and skeletal mineralization. But what about cross-country running? There is the case different. The biological requirement for a cross-country running is pure endurance. That is the reason here we need food D, because it provides us 1200 kilojoules of energy and 60 grams of carbohydrates, which is the fuel substrate that is required for sustained aerobic respiration in your muscle cells. Thirdly is about what is required for a menstruating woman. For a menstruating woman, the priority shifts to replacing lost blood. That is the reason here food C is the correct choice. Because food C in our choice here, why? Because it's high iron content. Okay, due to its food C is for its high iron content. This is 8. Okay, and you know that this iron content is essential to synthesize new hemoglobin that we have discussed in our 7.2 lecture. Now compare that to bodybuilding, where we need food D again, because this time, however, the rationale is not energy, it is hypertrophy. We need those 9 grams of protein which are present in food D to provide the amino acid building blocks to repair and grow muscle fibers after a workout. And finally, consider heart disease risk. Here we have to be very careful. We avoid food A because it is high saturated with fat content, that is 80 grams. Okay, that is the reason we avoid food A if we have heart disease risk, because it is a primary risk factor for atherosclerosis or plaque build up in your arteries. So choosing the right food is not just about what to include, it is about what to limit. And this is how scientists and nutritionists view the human diet. It is not just healthy eating, it is matching your body's precise physiological requirements to the biochemical composition of your food. Now take a look at what we can call the paradox of food A. If you look purely at bone health, food A is an absolute superhero because of its massive vitamin D content. But if you prescribe that exact same food to someone at risk for cardiovascular disease, it becomes highly dangerous due to its extreme fat content. So the context of the patient changes the value of the food. On the other side, look at the efficiency of food D. No doubt, it is a fantastic high density resource for active individuals because it simultaneously delivers both high energy and high protein. But what happens if a completely sedentary individual eats that same food daily? That dense energy is not burnt. It is stored, leading to unwanted weight gain. So when an exam question or a real world scenario asks if a food is good or bad, your answer as a biologist should always start with, it depends on the physiological need. because nutrition is a dynamic balance. This is not a static rule book. That is why it its requirement changes from individual to individual, from a person to a person, according to its routine life. Here is a quick motivation quote for you, from which was said by Buddha. He said, to keep the body in good health is a duty. Otherwise, we shall not be able to keep our mind strong and clear. So, by learning this lecture about micro and macronutrients, water and fiber, we can easily understand that how we can keep our body healthy. And if this lesson clarified your doubts, then hit the like button and subscribe for more high impact biology tutorials. Tomorrow I shall come up with a new topic of this chapter number 7. Thank you and goodbye.